This experience happened to my wife and me in 2022, right after the lockdowns were lifted. It not only ruined our trip, but completely changed the way I view human composure. We were hiking at Tall Pines State Park, located in the high northern regions of Vermont, a place we'd visited many times before getting married. Our plan was to hike to a small lake, camp overnight, and return to the car the next day. It was just after a blizzard, but the weather had softened. It was cold, with thick snow on the tree branches, and the main trails were cleared just enough for safe passage. The air was quiet, and the park was almost empty, which made the trip even more ideal. We brought mini snowshoes to help with some difficult sections, but mainly we walked in anti-slip boots. Most of that morning, it was just my wife and me. We stopped for lunch at a rest point and met a young couple, Liam and Clara. They had been married for 2 weeks and called this their snowy honeymoon. Clara was outgoing, cheerful, and kept giggling while Liam told stories. Liam was calmer, but both seemed very much in love. We chatted for about an hour and then parted ways. We reached the lake around 5 p.m., set up camp, and went to sleep. Everything went as smoothly as any previous camping trip. The next morning, we packed up and started heading back around 10 a.m. As we neared the midway rest point where we had met Liam and Clara yesterday, we didn't intend to stop. Unexpectedly, we ran into Liam walking down alone, with a large backpack on his shoulders. Clara was nowhere to be seen. My wife spoke up and asked. Liam looked at us, seemed a bit hesitant, and wouldn't meet our eyes. He said Clara had fallen ill last night. Just a cold or a slight fever, I think. She decided to catch a ride home early this morning to rest. Told me I should continue to finish the journey alone, as this was the most important part of the trip. He spoke with a tired look. I felt something off. It was too cold for someone to head home alone without company, especially after being sick all night. And why would she insist her husband continue the journey while she was ill? Before we could ask anything further, Liam said goodbye and turned away, saying he saw another group of people he needed to talk to. I didn't want to be nosy, so I didn't follow. My wife seemed like she wanted to stay, but I reminded her that we needed to get back early to handle some things during the day. She reluctantly agreed, and we continued our hike. We reached the parking lot not long after. The snow hadn't melted yet, but the air had warmed up slightly. Several groups of people were gathered, chatting, and as we drove away, a ranger vehicle arrived, followed by a few other SUVs. I just thought they were doing routine patrols. We got home in the afternoon and quickly returned to the routine of work and cleanup. It wasn't until the next morning, as I was drinking coffee and watching the morning news, that the program suddenly aired a special report. Female hiker dies during winter camping trip. They showed the victim's face, and I nearly dropped my coffee cup. It was Clara. I shouted for my wife to come in, pointing at the screen. "Is that her?" My wife was startled, stared intently for a moment, and then let out a small gasp. Their wedding photo was then displayed, and there was no mistaking it. According to Liam's statement to the police, he and his wife woke up early that day to watch the sunrise at a high icy cliff that overlooked the entire lake area. Liam claimed Clara slipped on black ice near the edge of the cliff and fell over 200 feet. He said it took him hours to get out of the no-service area to call for help. But my wife and I distinctly remembered. We met Liam after the time he claimed the accident happened. He didn't mention it or ask for help. He even fabricated a story about Clara being sick and going home. This just didn't make sense. If something like that happened to my wife, I would be distraught, panicked, doing everything I could to save her. There's no way I could calmly make up a story and continue hiking like that. Liam couldn't be that callous, unless the whole thing was a lie. We called the Vermont State Police. reported the entire encounter, the time, the location, and the statement we heard from Liam. The person who answered said they would record it and forward it to the investigation department. But we haven't received a call since. My wife's intuition and mine tell us that a crime may have occurred. I can't shake the persistent feeling that a man is getting away with murder. I'm Martha. A few years ago, after my husband passed away, I lived with my daughter Emily in our quiet ranch-style house in Oregon. Life was peaceful until a fateful morning. Around 10 a.m. that day, an unknown number called. The voice on the other end belonged to a man who introduced himself as an employee of Chase Bank and informed me that I had applied for a new credit card. He politely stated that the card would be delivered to my home at 1 p.m. that afternoon. I was quite puzzled because I only used Wells Fargo Bank. I called Emily to confirm. That sounds like a scam. Mom, you should block that number immediately, she said with a worried tone. This could be a voice phishing or identity theft attempt. I confirmed Emily hadn't applied for any credit card, so I immediately blocked the number. I told myself it was just a hopeless trick and that the matter was closed. But I had a persistent feeling of unease. Right around 1 p.m., that same day, I heard the doorbell ring. Looking out the window, I saw a man in a black baseball cap standing at the gate. He was holding a slim leather briefcase, looking like a delivery person. He rang the bell continuously, then spoke loudly, saying he was there to deliver a credit card and needed my signature. I felt a bit confused, but still remembered the morning call. I decided not to open the door. I moved closer to the window to see his face more clearly. He was pressing his face close to the door, then glanced around as if checking if anyone else was in the vicinity. This behavior was not like a normal delivery person. I moved near the door and spoke up, trying to keep my voice calm. I did not apply for any credit card. I'm sorry, but I think you should check your information again. There was silence for a few seconds, then his voice became colder and more strained. I just need your signature for confirmation. It will only take a minute. I was firm. I did not request a card. I will call the bank myself. Can you please leave? A long silence followed my statement. I walked toward the window and saw he was still standing there, his lips tightly pressed, his chin slightly twitching. Disappointment and anger began to show. Then, his voice lost all its initial politeness. Are you sure you won't take it? I drove all this way. His voice contained a threat. I didn't answer. I was thinking of calling the police. Without any warning, the wooden door shook with a powerful slam that made my heart jump. Continuous impacts followed. I looked at the man and saw that the initial professional face was completely gone, replaced by a frantic, hateful expression. He shouted obscenities. "Open the door, you stupid old woman! I see you! Stop pretending!" I trembled, calling the neighborhood security service. While I whispered to describe the situation, he continued to threaten, his voice hoarse. "I swear I'll smash your old face." When a security guard arrived not long after, he reluctantly drove away. It took me a long time to calm down afterward. The security guard and I reviewed the video footage from the security camera. The initial images showed the man arriving with nothing but the briefcase. But at the end of the video, when he turned his back to leave, the guard and I both froze. At this moment, he was holding something long and dark. The shape of the object left no doubt in our minds. It was likely a metal club or some kind of weapon. It had been hidden in the briefcase. I suddenly felt a chill down my spine. If I had opened the door, that thing would probably have been used to attack me. I realized I had been very close to danger, potentially injury, or even worse. The police arrived within 15 minutes. They reviewed the video and explained that this was a growing criminal tactic in the area, impersonating a delivery person to gain access to the victim, then using a weapon for robbery or assault. Fortunately, I didn't open the door, but in my heart, there were still many things I couldn't explain. Why was he so angry? That rage wasn't from a failed robber. It felt like a personal hatred. A few days later, the police called me in for additional testimony, and they informed me that a suspect had been arrested. His name was Jake Miller, 22 years old. He didn't know me at all, but the police said he knew Emily, my daughter, very well. At that moment, all the pieces began to fit together, forming a terrifying picture. Emily had worked part-time at the Safeway supermarket near the university during last summer's break. Jake Miller was also a seasonal employee there. She recounted that Jake had repeatedly invited her out, but she had politely refused each time. After Emily quit her job, he still tried to keep in touch and even stalked her social media accounts. Hearing this, I knew Jake was truly an obsessed stalker. But why did he target me? When the police brought up past events that might be related to the suspect's motive, I suddenly recalled a phone call a few months ago. That day, I called Emily while she was working her afternoon shift. Because her hands were busy, she left her phone on speaker and lightly rested it on the checkout counter. I had no idea about this. During the conversation, I accidentally said a sentence that, thinking back now, I wish I had never uttered. You shouldn't hang out with those supermarket workers. They're not suitable for you. Jake Miller, the arrested man, he was standing right near Emily at that moment. According to the police, it might have been after that public humiliation that Jake Miller began to harbor thoughts of revenge. Jake confessed that he didn't intend to kill, but only wanted to inflict pain, specifically to injure me. Perhaps cutting my tendons in my hands or legs as a way to punish Emily for rejecting him and for my previous disparagement of him. The court concluded that his actions constituted conspiracy to commit serious bodily harm and sentenced him to 1 year in prison. Even though he has been sentenced, it hasn't lessened my anxiety. I live in constant fear. Emily is also very worried about me. She hasn't been able to focus on her studies for months. Lately, I'm seriously thinking about selling this house. This story is not just a regular criminal case. For me, it is a warning. I realize that sometimes just one seemingly harmless sentence can deeply hurt someone, even leading them to harbor thoughts of revenge. It's been 14 years, but I still remember every detail of that autumn trip to the Appalachians. Every time I hear someone mention West Virginia, a shiver runs down my spine. My name is Rachel. I was 26 and had just quit my job. I wanted to find something new in my life, so I decided to take a few months to travel across the eastern US. My only companion was Duke, my 2-year-old pit bull. I planned the whole trip in just 3 days. Back then, technology wasn't what it is today. All we had was a paper road atlas and a flip phone with no GPS. The trip began, and I'd never felt so free and relaxed. Duke was just as happy and excited. My old job had been so busy, and I hadn't made enough time for him. People always said that fall in the Appalachian Mountains in West Virginia was beautiful, and they were right. The road curved through mountains covered in yellow and red leaves. But the deeper we drove, the emptier the road became. My phone lost service, and the radio couldn't pick up a single station. That afternoon, as the sun began to set, I noticed the gas gauge was almost on empty. The nearest gas station on my map was still miles away, and I started to get worried. I kept glancing at the gas gauge, terrified of getting stranded on a lonely mountain road. But after a sharp turn, a small town appeared. What was strange was that it wasn't on my map at all. The town had only a few scattered wooden houses, a small church, and a single gas station. The sign at the entrance was too faded to read the name. I immediately pulled off the road and stopped. I parked at the gas station and breathed a sigh of relief. I filled the tank myself, then went to the office to pay. There was a small building behind the pumps, with the door half open and the inside quite dark. When I stepped in, a thick smell of old cigarettes and dampness hit me, making me wince. The man sitting behind the counter made me uneasy. He was skinny, with long hair that covered half his face, and his hollow eyes stared at me without blinking. I put the money on the counter and asked for directions back to the main highway. He stayed silent for so long I thought he hadn't heard me. Finally, he spoke. "There's no way back from here. To get to the highway, you gotta go north more than 17 miles, to the fork in the road, then turn left." I paused. Wait a minute, 17 miles? That doesn't make any sense. I just came from the highway, and it took me less than half an hour to get here. When I said that, he just shrugged and turned back to the old newspaper on the counter, not looking at me again. Outside, Duke started to bark. Through the window, I could see he was tense, staring at the forest behind the gas station. Duke never reacted that way unless something was seriously wrong. A feeling of dread washed over me, and my gut told me to leave immediately. I rushed back to my car and started looking for the way I'd come in. I drove to the end of the main street, which ended in a dead end, a broken brick wall with thick woods behind it. I turned around and took a small dirt road next to the church, but after a few minutes, it also stopped suddenly in the middle of a bunch of trees. I tried turning right onto another road, which just led me back to the gas station. I drove around this tiny town a few times, my desperation growing. Every road led into the woods or back to the starting point, as if the road I'd taken to get here just a few minutes ago had completely disappeared. The sky turned a deep purple as the sun went down. With no other choice, I went back to the gas station with the faint hope that the man would give me better directions. But this time, he wasn't alone. 2 other men were leaning against the wall outside the office. One was tall and thin, and the other was short and heavy. They looked at my RV and giggled to each other. When I asked for directions again, the tall man pointed north, exactly the way the employee had told me to go. The heavy man kept nodding with a creepy smile on his face. I knew there was no point in asking for help, so I left without another word. I sat in my car with the doors locked, looking at the map again. Duke was growling nonstop, his eyes fixed on the 2 men watching us. The gas station employee had now come out and stood between them. All 3 of them were looking at me. I carefully studied the map and couldn't find any road like the one the employee had described. That area was only marked as thick forest with no roads. I guess they were trying to send me deep into the woods for some reason. I started to cry. The feeling of dread I had been holding back just burst out. Just as I was panicking and didn't know what to do, a pickup truck pulled into the gas station. An older man got out. He saw me sitting in my car with a look of terror on my face, then looked at the 3 men who were silently watching me. He walked straight to my RV and tapped lightly on the window. I hesitated for a moment, looking carefully at his face before I decided to roll the window down a tiny bit. He asked if I was looking for the way to the highway, and when I nodded, he glanced at the 3 men who were starting to move closer. He told me to follow him immediately and not to hesitate for a second. His voice was so serious and urgent that I couldn't help but obey. I started the car and followed his pickup truck. We passed the church, and he suddenly turned right onto a trail that I swear I hadn't seen before. It was completely hidden by a row of thick trees, almost invisible in the dark. The dirt road was narrow and bumpy, just wide enough for my RV to fit through. After a few tense minutes of driving, the main highway appeared before us like a miracle. The man pulled over to the side of the road. When he rolled down his window, his face was very serious. He took an old map from the passenger seat and showed me that the other road stretched for 17 miles and then ended in the middle of nowhere, with only a few rusted cars and struggling families living there. He said the road they had pointed me to was a dead end. He said a few cars had been left there, and that the people at the gas station were not good people. If you had listened to them tonight, you wouldn't be here for me to tell you this. When I tried to ask more questions, he shook his head and told me not to be curious about things I shouldn't know. He told me to drive away right now, not to stop anywhere, and if I saw any other unnamed gas stations in this area, I should absolutely not stop. I drove all night. Duke was right next to me on high alert. It wasn't until we reached a city and the sun began to come up that we dared to stop at a crowded rest area. After sleeping and getting enough energy back, we drove for 8 hours straight to get home. After that trip, I never had any intention of taking a second trip in my life. To this day, I don't know exactly what was waiting at the end of the road those 3 men at the gas station pointed to, but I will always remember the look in the eyes of the gray-haired old man before he drove away. He saved me from something terrible so that I would have a chance to tell this story. One August afternoon last year, all it took was a faint knocking sound from an abandoned house to shatter all my beliefs. The perpetrator of the most brutal crime was the person I trusted the most. I'm Elton, the police chief of Sedona, Arizona. For over 15 years of serving here, I've always been proud of this small community. Everyone knows and trusts each other, and the most serious crimes are just land disputes or assaults from drunken fights. That afternoon, I received a call from a family who had just moved into the neighborhood. The woman's voice was filled with anxiety, saying there were strange noises coming from the abandoned house behind their home. The sound was like someone knocking on a wall. I drove my patrol car there. The abandoned house had been there for a long time. The former owner had died many years ago. With no heirs, it was just left to rot. I parked my car and walked into the yard. The weeds were knee-high, and the air was heavy with the smell of mold. I listened, but there was no sound. Maybe the family was mistaken. But as I was about to leave, a faint knocking sound echoed from below. I quickly grabbed my flashlight and some lock-picking tools from the car. I walked inside and felt the wooden floor creak beneath my feet. Searching the first floor, I discovered a secret door under the stairs, locked with a padlock the size of my fist. The strange thing was that the lock was brand new. I used bolt cutters to break the lock. The door opened, revealing a steep wooden staircase leading into the darkness. A strong, foul odor hit me, and I had to cover my nose. "Is anyone here?" My voice echoed down and disappeared into the silence. But then I heard a noise. I slowly walked down. A small room with a low ceiling and no windows gradually appeared. I was shocked to see 3 figures huddled in the corner. A woman and 2 children. All 3 were thin, like skeletons wrapped in skin. The woman looked at me with a look of disbelief. Then she crawled to my feet, grabbed my pants, and sobbed, "Please, please save us." I quickly sat down to comfort the woman. The 2 children, a boy and a girl, just looked at me with scared eyes. I immediately called for an ambulance. While waiting, I shined my flashlight around the room. The walls were covered with etchings. They had carved a line for each day that passed. There were also scrawled messages, pleas for help, and cries for rescue. A bucket in the corner served as a toilet. There were some old, rotting mattresses on the floor, a few cans of food and bottles of water. The medical team arrived and quickly took the woman and the 2 children away. I stayed at the scene with the investigation team. We found a notebook under a mattress. The yellowed pages documented the horror the victims had endured. The first page read, "My name is Leah Porter. Today is the first day I've been held here. If anyone finds this diary..." My mind immediately started racing when I read that line. Leah Porter was a girl who went missing 9 years ago when she was just 16. I had been part of that investigation. The case had been unsolved until today. I continued to read the following pages. She wrote about every day of her captivity, how she was kidnapped on her way home from school. She was locked in here and endured all kinds of physical and mental torture. The 2 children were the kidnappers. She tried to protect them, teaching them to read and write with charcoal on the walls. It was heartbreaking, and I admired Leah's resilience. While examining the scene, a sudden engine noise and a loud screech of tires drew everyone's attention. I looked and immediately recognized the car as belonging to Craig, my best friend. Craig got out of the car his face as pale as if he had just seen a ghost. I was surprised and asked him what he was doing here, but Craig's eyes were fixed on the ambulance where Leah was being cared for. He stood there like a stone statue for a few seconds. I saw his hands trembling, and he swallowed hard. Then he suddenly turned and ran. I had a bad feeling and ran after him, calling his name. Craig heard me calling and ran faster. I lunged and tackled Craig right in front of his car. "Why are you here, Craig?" He didn't answer, just looked at me with the eyes of a person caught red-handed. When I tackled Craig, a key fell out of his pocket. I handed it to an officer, and the key could open the lock I had just broken. In that moment, my world came crashing down. This abandoned house was only 2 blocks away from Craig's house. The key to the cellar was too new for the age of the house. And most importantly, Craig was the only person I had ever told about Leah Porter's disappearance 9 years ago. He once asked me why the police couldn't find anything. Now I knew the reason. Craig knew because he was the one who hid her. I wanted to punch my best friend, whom I had trusted for 20 years, but I just stood there trembling, watching Craig get handcuffed. I realized how wrong I had been. I had trusted Craig, invited him to my house often, and let him be close to my daughter. I considered Craig my brother, while he was torturing a high school girl and 2 children just a few miles away. In the interrogation room, Craig admitted everything. He confessed to stalking Leah for months before kidnapping her, using the abandoned house as a place of confinement. DNA evidence confirmed he was the father of the 2 children. Leah's diaries, secretly taken photos, and personal belongings found in Craig's house solidified his guilt. With undeniable evidence, Craig was charged with kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, and rape. Sitting there, reading his statement, I felt suffocated. It took me a long time to sign the arrest warrant for my best friend. I sat in my office for a long time, feeling empty. I still couldn't believe what was happening. Craig is now awaiting trial. Leah and her 2 children are receiving medical and psychological care, slowly learning how to live again. As for me, I'm still the police chief of Sedona, but every night, as I patrol the quiet streets I once believed I knew so well, I wonder how many other secrets are hiding behind closed doors. I am Carlos, 36 years old, born and raised in a small town in Texas. I have a twin brother named Elton, and we were inseparable growing up. But as we grew older, our paths began to diverge. Elton chose to start working right after graduating from high school. After a few relationships, Elton met and fell in love with Larissa, a woman who was 6 years older than him. Age is not an issue in love, but what made me uncomfortable with Larissa was that she had 7 children, with 7 different men. She looked youthful, but her eyes always carried an indescribable coldness. I had advised Elton several times to reconsider, but my brother brushed it off. Elton said that love doesn't need a reason, and that taking responsibility for Larissa and her children was something he willingly chose. The children are not to blame, and I love them as if they were my own flesh and blood. Every time I visit, I usually bring toys, clothes, and storybooks. Fortunately, the cold, indifferent gaze of Larissa was not passed down to any of her children. Among them, Jason, the 4-year-old youngest boy, always makes me the most worried. The boy has autism and often sits quietly in the corner. The little boy, with pale skin and large round eyes, always carries an expression of fear, as if everything around him is a threat. His thin brown hair often falls over his forehead, and his skinny shoulders and sluggish gait make him look as if he's trying to hide from the entire world. A few times I noticed bruises on Jason's body. They were of various sizes scattered across Jason's small body, from his arms and skinny legs to his back. They looked like patches of painful color, telling a story that the boy could not speak aloud. The boy had to endure harm that no one should ever experience, especially at such an innocent age. On another visit, I saw Jason walking unsteadily, each small step wobbling as if he couldn't keep his balance, his skinny legs trembling every time they touched the ground. Every time Jason lifted his foot, a look of pain briefly appeared on his pale face, as if each movement was a torment. I spoke with Elton about it, but all I received in return was indifference and a request to stay away from his family. What is called a family, yet lacks love and protection. I didn't go to Elton's house for a month after that. The messages from the children wondering about my absence made it impossible for me to hold back any longer. One early autumn afternoon, I drove to Elton's house, bringing along some new toys. As I got out of the car, my gaze was immediately drawn to the scene behind the house. Elton and Larissa were bent over, seemingly burying something. A small black sack lay at their feet, and their movements were full of secrecy. Looking through the window, I saw the children playing inside, but Jason was nowhere to be found. A sense of unease overwhelmed me. Sitting in the car, I called the police and explained everything I had witnessed. Only a few hours later, the police arrived at the house. Elton and Larissa appeared panicked, but tried to remain calm. When the police dug up the sack, I couldn't look directly, but nothing could have prepared me for the shock that followed. Inside was the tiny, cold body of Jason, curled up, covered in bruises. The results of the autopsy that followed only deepened my pain. Jason's bones were broken in multiple places, and some had healed before the boy passed away. These injuries were not accidents. They were the result of prolonged torture. Elton and Larissa were arrested immediately and sentenced to 28 and 25 years in prison, respectively, for the horrific acts they had committed. On a windy afternoon, I stood silently before Jason's small grave. I thought about the boy's fearful eyes, about the faint smile he would give me every time I visited. The remaining 6 children were taken to a care center, and every month I would visit and bring gifts for them. They all deserved to be loved and protected. The horrifying case occurred in December 2017 in Cleveland, Ohio, when the police received a call from Scott Rodriguez, the brother of Christopher Rodriguez, reporting the death of a 5-year-old victim named Jordan. He was buried in the backyard by his mother, Larissa Rodriguez, and her boyfriend, Christopher. After being interrogated, Larissa admitted that Jordan had died on September 21st, 2017. Afterward, she and Christopher buried his body in the backyard. The investigation by the police and FBI confirmed Jordan's body on December 19, 2017. The forensic investigation revealed that Jordan had multiple broken bones before his death, with the injuries untreated. Jordan was a special child, autistic, and in need of special care, but he did not receive the attention he deserved from his mother and her boyfriend. The case sparked outrage and heartache in the public, highlighting the brutal crime and the failure to protect children from abuse.
Ken, my best friend from university, is a guy that everyone admires. He has a striking appearance, a well-proportioned body, neatly trimmed blonde hair, and captivating deep brown eyes. Ken always dresses neatly, with his shirts always perfectly pressed, a flawless, elegant appearance of a young man from a wealthy family. It's not hard to spot Ken in the crowd, as he has a bright, promising presence that makes it impossible for others not to notice him. With outstanding academic achievements since he was young, Ken is someone everyone believes will have a brilliant future. But there is one thing about Ken that many people can't quite understand. He's very quiet and a little shy. Ken doesn't like large gatherings and never casually chats with his classmates. He often sits alone, quietly observing others as if he is lost in a different world. Ken and I have known each other since the first day of university, when we were both assigned to the same group. At first, Ken was very distant, but over time, we became closer. I tried to open up and bring him into my world. Although Ken gradually became more comfortable, he still maintained his calm, quiet demeanor. In the 3rd year of university, Ken began to show some strange behavior. At first, Ken's usual neatness gradually disappeared. His hair was no longer as tidy as before, messy, as if it hadn't been trimmed in days. The perfectly pressed shirts were now wrinkled, with intentional stains, in the form of drawings and crude phrases. Ken became disheveled, absent-minded, and exhausted, his appearance unrecognizable as the bright young man everyone once knew. The change didn't stop at his appearance. Ken became increasingly obsessed with the attention of others. Ken started to act differently, trying to be close and friendly with everyone, something he had never done before. Ken took the initiative to join conversations, trying to blend in with other group gatherings. He smiled more often, but the smile didn't carry true happiness. It was like an effort, a forced attempt to make himself accepted. This forced friendliness didn't last long and quickly turned into even strange behavior. Ken wanted to attract more attention from the crowd in a stronger way. I remember the first time when he suddenly stood up in the middle of class while the teacher was lecturing and began speaking loudly about a great plan of his. He said that he would become the inventor of time-traveling machines and make humans immortal. The whole class laughed, amused by Ken's unusual behavior, while the teacher frowned and reminded him. Not stopping there, Ken gradually began to do even more bizarre actions in every situation with the crowd. He would suddenly stand on a chair in the middle of the school cafeteria, shouting loudly about his absurd plans. A few times, he shouted incomprehensible slogans while everyone was quietly studying. I could see the desperation in Ken's eyes as he tried to attract attention, a longing that bordered on obsession. He wanted everyone to look at him, to be the center of attention, even if it meant Ken had to become strange, even bizarre. Ken's change left me confused and questioning. When I first noticed the change in his appearance, I wondered if it was due to academic pressure or some difficulties he wasn't talking about. But as time went on, this change made me feel more and more worried and uncertain about Ken's true personality. I tried to get closer to Ken, to understand him better, but I knew Ken wanted more than that. A seed of horror was cultivated by Ken in his own soul since he was a child. Ken's strange behavior was the final threshold before the tree of that seed from the past bore fruit. It was an evening that seemed ordinary. I sat in my dorm room, books spread out in front of me, but my mind was drifting somewhere else, trying to focus, but failing. At that moment, my phone rang. A message came from a mutual friend of mine in Kemp. Just a few short lines, but enough to leave me stunned. Ken went to the police station and confessed. He killed his mother. My hands trembled. My eyes couldn't leave the phone screen, and the words seemed to dance before my eyes. I read the message once, then again, but I couldn't believe what I was reading. My mind went blank. Time seemed to stop, and all that was left was panic. My heart began to race, and my body went stiff. A cold sensation spread from my chest, as if an ice block was pressing heavily on my heart. Ken, my best friend, is a murderer? No, this can't be true. Ken went to the police station, standing in front of the officers, dressed in a neat outfit, a spotless white shirt, black trousers, and shiny leather shoes. Ken's hair was carefully combed, and his face showed no emotion, as if everything that had happened was of no importance. He spoke loudly and confidently, outlining his plan and the crime he had committed. The police began their investigation and slowly uncovered the tragic yet condemnable story of Ken's mother. They discovered that Ken had lived under the twisted and cruel upbringing of his mother. Ken was expected to become a perfect gem, flawless and without a single blemish, by his ambitious mother. But she didn't use a scientific approach to parenting, combined with the love of a mother to raise Ken. All the frustrations and resentment from the darker side of a seemingly perfect family, she poured them onto Ken. His impressive appearance and outstanding academic achievements were the mask she created to cover up her own cruelty. Every action, every thought, every moment of Ken's life had to be under his mother's surveillance. He lived with his physical functions, but his emotions were controlled and permitted by his mother. The price for that perfection was that Ken's childhood and soul were distorted, forced into a mold with no way out. Ken endured that torment in silence, never daring to speak out. He just wanted freedom, to escape the controlled life, and chose to end it all. The utter helplessness and despair were expressed through the 13 knife wounds Ken left on his mother's body. When I learned about Ken's past, I felt an endless sorrow, a deep regret for my friend. I can't forget the look in Ken's eyes as he was led away by the police. Empty, soulless eyes, but with something that seemed like a sense of relief. It was as if he had finally escaped that nightmare, even though the price he had to pay was too great.
The pressure from an environment lacking love and understanding can cause deep wounds, leading a person to lose themselves, and sometimes the only form of release comes from the most brutal actions.
Brenna is a woman of Asian descent. She was born and raised in the city of Columbus, Ohio. Although she has a stable job, Brenna's income is simply not enough. Brenna has 2 small children. They are a pair of 5-month-old twins. The boy's name is Baron and the girl's name is Lani. She is taking care of her 2 young children all on her own, and life for the 3 of them is quite challenging. They are living in a small apartment in the city suburbs. Brenna's ex-boyfriend, after learning that she was pregnant, denied his responsibilities and cut off all contact. Brenna went to work while being literally tortured from morning sickness during the first 3 months of her pregnancy. After that came the difficult days commuting by bus with a large pregnant belly. Brenna worked until the day she gave birth. The most dangerous and important moment, she also gave birth alone. But Brenna always remained cheerful and full of energy. She embraced everything with a bright smile. Those around her admired the extraordinary resilience of this little woman. Brenna had forgotten about her terrible ex-boyfriend and was ready to embrace a new relationship. She wanted someone to rely on, someone who would accept her children and take good care of them. Besides, she knew her current job would make it very difficult for her children to have a fulfilling life. To explore new romantic opportunities, Brenna used the popular dating app Tinder. Just a few days after using it, Brenna and a man named Alden began to get to know each other. Brenna felt comfortable sharing her circumstances. Alden also enjoyed listening and was even impressed by this woman. Alden introduced himself as a nurse at a children's hospital and said he loved children. They got along well and quickly arranged their first date. Although Alden was 20 minutes late for their appointment, he still made a good impression on Brenna with his nurse's outfit. The way Alden spoke and his gentle gestures showed his respect for Brenna. Brenna also made Alden's heart flutter with her radiant smile and positive energy. The first date went well. Both of them looked forward to their future dates. Alden frequently inquired about Baron and Lani during their encounters. He worried about who would take care of the kids while the 2 of them were dating. Brenna smiled brightly, saying that the kids were very well behaved and she had ways to manage. By the 4th date, after dropping Brenna off at her house, Alden confessed his feelings to her. Alden spoke words of love, respect, and admiration for Brenna, which moved her to tears. They hugged and shared their sweet first kiss. After that, Alden expressed his wish to go up to Brenna's house to visit the children and stay overnight. Brenna declined, thinking that Alden was rushing things while she was not yet ready. She couldn't yet place absolute trust in Alden. Brenna wanted both of them to have more time to get to know each other. Having failed in love once already, she would be more cautious this time. Hearing this, Alden showed signs of sadness. After failing to persuade Brenna to change her mind, his attitude completely shifted. He began to use harsh words and gradually took a negative tone. They had a serious argument, and in the end, Alden shouted an insult at Brenna and turned to leave. Brenna felt completely disappointed in this man. He seemed like a different person. She felt hurt once again, returned home, held her little daughter in her arms, and cried. The next day, Brenna regained her positive spirit. She woke up early to take care of her children and prepare breakfast. Suddenly, came loud and persistent knocking on the door. Brenna rushed out to open it. In stark contrast to her bright smile was the anger and annoyance of her neighbor. The neighbor demanded that Brenna clean up immediately because the foul smell had affected her family for an entire week. Brenna looked into the house, where large and small black trash bags were lined up in the kitchen. Brenna looked at her neighbor and smiled awkwardly, promising to clean up right now. The neighbor left in frustration, and Brenna hurriedly began to gather her belongings to go to work. The trash bags had been dealt with, but Brenna didn't notice when she took them out of the house. At work, Brenna received a message from Alden asking for forgiveness, but she didn't reply. Following that, there were many calls, but Brenna didn't answer them. She believed he was just a guy trying to play with her emotions and felt there was nothing to regret. Alden was very persistent. He continuously sent bouquets of flowers and gifts to Brenna's office. While her coworkers expressed admiration, Brenna felt annoyed and scared. On another day, during work hours, Brenna's manager informed her that someone wanted to meet her. When she arrived at the waiting room, Brenna was confused to find it was Alden. He was dressed very neatly, holding a bouquet of roses, and his gentle manners were just like the first time they met. Brenna got straight to the point, saying that she wanted to break up with Alden because she felt they were not compatible. Alden pretended not to understand and painted a fanciful future for the two of them. Brenna lost her patience. She told the security guard to remove this disturbing man from there. That evening, when she returned home, Brenna carefully observed her surroundings, fearing that Alden would follow her. After entering the house, she locked the door securely and carried out her duties as a mother, taking care of her infant children. After completing her household chores, Brenna looked at her two children sleeping in their cribs and dozed off without realizing it. In the middle of the night, Brenna was startled awake by the crying of one of the children. She wanted to sit up and check on her child, but felt something heavy pressing down on her. Brenna screamed in shock when she saw Alden's face close to hers, his large body pinning her down. The baby's cries grew louder, mixed with Alden's maniacal laughter. Brenna felt like her head was going to explode. She used all her strength to break free. Brenna woke up and realized it was just a nightmare. Perhaps she had been too scared of Alden. She looked around. The room was normal, and the baby had stopped crying. Brenna rushed to embrace her little girl, frantic. The next day, when Brenna went to work, she encountered the same neighbor at the door. The neighbor continued to complain about the foul smell emanating from Brenna's apartment. After days of being tormented by Alden, Brenna was no longer cheerful and friendly as she had been. Her face visibly showed signs of exhaustion. Despite apologizing and trying to avoid the neighbor, she kept pestering Brenna. Brenna shouted loudly while pushing the neighbor down and quickly left. The entire day at the office, she couldn't focus on her work and was reminded about it by her manager. In the evening, when work was over, Brenna returned home feeling anxious and panicked. Brenna quickly closed the door behind her. But just then, a large hand pushed the door back towards Brenna. Alden, with a twisted expression of perversion on his face, quickly entered and locked the door. Brenna, in a panic, rushed to her phone. She intended to call the police, but Alden was quicker. He forcefully seized Brenna's phone and slammed it down to the floor. Not thinking much, Brenna hastily ran to her room with her children. The instincts of a mother made Brenna stronger than ever. Alden laughed as he uttered disgusting lines of seduction. He easily broke into Brenna's room, which was cold. Alden noticed the room had 3 air conditioners set to the lowest temperature. Not finding Brenna, he grew excited, imagining a fun game of hide-and-seek. He approached the cribs where the 2 children lay, shouting loudly to scare them and make them cry, but they remained silent. Alden picked up the girl, and his expression instantly changed from joy to surprise. In his hands was a half-human, half-plastic doll. The face was that of a rotting newborn, while the body was made of plastic. There were no children here. It was all a creation of Brenna's imagination. After giving birth alone in the hospital, she had received the heartbreaking news that her daughter had deceased. Brenna had gone crazy since then. She had used her dead child's body to piece together with the doll's body and had raised it for months. But what about the boy? Brenna had clearly said she gave birth to twins. Looking down at the remaining child in the crib, Alden panicked when he saw that its face was that of a grown man. It was Brenna's ex-boyfriend. Suddenly, a heavy blow struck Alden's head hard, knocked him out cold as he collapsed to the floor. Brenna laughed with delight, took a knife, and without hesitation, ended Alden's life. The next day, a rather plump doll with Alden's face appeared in the crib. "Baron and Lanny, this is your little brother." In the corner of the room, Brenna placed another large and heavy trash bag next to the previous ones. A few days later, a 4th child appeared in the crib, bearing the wrinkled, aged face of the neighbor.
The warm yellow lights light up the fancy restaurant, giving it a cozy, romantic vibe. The sweet piano music coming from the corner mixes with the laughter of couples enjoying Valentine's Day. Vincent and Lena are having dinner together at a table by the window. Vincent, in his sharp black suit and confident smile, gives off the vibe of a successful guy. Lena, rocking a tight red dress that shows off her curves, gazes lovingly at the guy across from her. Everything about Vincent makes Lena happy. His style, his chill vibe, and how he makes her feel special. They've known each other for a few months, and this dinner is their way of celebrating their growing relationship. Everything's perfect, from the food to the vibe. It all feels like it's set up just for Lena to live out her romantic dream. The meal goes great, and Vincent waves the waiter over to their table. The waiter is a skinny guy in a tidy uniform, but he has a pale face and nervous eyes. He gives Lena a curious look while listening to Vincent's order. Lena gives the waiter a disapproving look, her face showing a bit of discomfort. Lena thinks the waiter's presence is kind of weird. She gets up, grabs Vincent's hand, and signals that they should bounce from the restaurant right away. Vincent, though a bit confused, still follows her. As Lena walks through the door, she glances back and sees the waiter still standing there, his eyes looking like he wants to say something. When Lena gets to the parking lot, she sighs, still feeling frustrated. But just as she's about to get in her car, a thought suddenly pops up. The watch! She hurries back to the restaurant, telling Vincent she left the watch he gave her in the bathroom. Vincent waits outside, his eyes following Lena as she disappears through the big glass doors of the restaurant. About 20 minutes later, Lena comes back, smiling big as she holds her watch in her hand. Vincent greets her with a soft squeeze of her hand, and they head out. It's still early, and they've eaten enough, so Vincent suggests going to his place for a few more glasses of wine. Lena quickly agrees. Vincent's house, like everything he owns, oozes luxury and class. Big glass walls surround the living room, giving a view of the starry night sky, and the fireplace light makes the space feel warmer. Vincent pours 2 glasses of red wine and sits down next to Lena on the big sofa. They talk, laugh, and share little stories about life. Lena leans her head on Vincent's shoulder, feeling his warmth and the scent of wine in the air. Time moves slowly, and everything feels perfect, like the kind of evening every couple dreams of. But the evening doesn't last forever. When the clock hits midnight, Lena feels her eyes getting heavy. Vincent smiles, gently helps her lie down on the sofa, and pulls the soft blanket over her. She falls asleep, feeling warm and safe. Lena wakes up when it's already dawn. The room is now quiet, with just the faint light from the dim fireplace left. Lena calmly packs up her things, fixes her hair in front of the big mirror in the living room, and leaves quietly. In her apartment, Lena sits on the sofa, sipping a cup of hot coffee. The watch on her wrist sparkles. She turns on the TV and switches to the morning news. The first image that shows up makes Lena stop. On the screen is a shot of the restaurant where they had dinner last night. The news talks about the mysterious death of a waiter. The guy was found collapsed in the restaurant's bathroom, with the cause still unknown. Lena sips her hot tea, remembering the waiter's confused look when he was caught eavesdropping on her phone call in a hidden corner of the restaurant. The corners of Lena's lips curl into a smile. Soon after, the news switches to something else. Young billionaire Vincent Davis has been found dead at his home. Authorities say there are no signs of foul play, but the cause of death remains undetermined. Early reports from the scene suggest that a stroke is a likely cause. Lena stares at the screen for a long time. Her smile gets bigger, and her eyes sparkle with satisfaction. She puts down her teacup and leans back in her chair, letting the sound of the TV echo in the quiet room. Lena takes out her phone and makes a call. "I've done what you asked. That big fortune is yours now. Just transfer the rest of the money to my account, and we'll cut off all contact." The romance between Vincent and Lena is now just a buried secret. For Lena, that Valentine's Day is really just a perfect memory with a nice reward. I always wished for a little sibling to play with. If I could choose, I wanted a little sister. That wish just kept growing, and I was always bringing it up to my parents. Every time we sat down for dinner, I would mention it.
"Please,"
I begged. Dad would put his knife and fork down, look at me with a very tired expression, and say, "It's not that simple. It takes time and careful planning." Mom would glance at Dad, then look at me and force a smile. She'd reassure me that I needed to be a little older to be a big sister, but I didn't care. I wanted a little sister to play with, to share my toys, to brush her hair, just like I saw on TV. When I was 9, my parents finally responded to my wish about getting a sister. Then one day, my parents actually brought Lena home. I remember jumping up and down with excitement. She was much smaller than I imagined, with big round eyes and brown hair. Her hair color was different from my blonde hair, but that wasn't a big deal at all. Immediately, I ran up to my room and started sorting my toys. I got Dad's labeling machine, typed my name and Lena's, and stuck the labels on everything. The pink teddy bear would be hers. My Lego set would be mine. I worked all afternoon, feeling like a responsible big sister. Lena cried a lot during those first few weeks. Sometimes it seemed like she was screaming, long, drawn-out screams that made me cover my ears. I asked Mom why Lena kept crying. Mom stroked my hair and said, "She's just getting used to her new home, honey. She'll be okay." But some nights, Dad had to carry her down to the basement, where there was a soundproof room. He explained that this was to keep from bothering the neighbors. It was good because every time Dad carried Lena back from the basement to the bedroom, she had stopped crying. For the first month, Lena slept in my parents' bed. I tried to sneak into the room a few times, but the door was always locked. Through the crack under the door, I heard Mom singing a lullaby to Lena. "Did you give it the drink yet?" I heard Dad whisper. "She's too little. I'm afraid it will hurt her brain." I guess Mom and Dad were talking about giving Lena milk mixed with vitamins, like I used to see. When I tried to open the door, Mom would know and say loudly, "The bed isn't big enough for the whole family, sweetie." I understood and quietly went back to my room. In my room, my parents had placed a small white crib with bars. I knew it was for Lena. The day I had been waiting for finally came. My parents moved her into my room. Lena didn't cry as much as before, but sometimes I'd wake up and see her lying there, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling in the dark. In the dim light of my nightlight, her face looked strangely pale. I crept out of bed, brought my favorite stuffed bunny over to the bars. "I'm gonna let Lena play with it," I whispered. Lena looked at me, then she started to cry. I quickly dove under my covers before I heard the heavy sound of Dad's footsteps on the stairs. After about 2 months, Lena could play with me in the playroom. Dad gave me very strict instructions about the toys I was not allowed to give her. I nodded eagerly. I sat behind Lena, slowly combing through her brown hair. It was then that I noticed Lena had a small light brown mark on her chin. But my little sister was still very beautiful. I pointed to the toys with the labels on them. "This is yours. This is mine. See?" Lena just stared at them. Every afternoon, I'd run home and tell Lena about my class, about my teacher. I drew pictures of the two of us playing together. When I showed them to Dad, he looked at the pictures for a long time, then said, "I'll keep these to look at later." Then one day Lena suddenly disappeared. I came home from school and found Mom sitting at the kitchen table. "Where's Lena?" I asked. Mom didn't look at me. Tears were running down her cheeks. "Mommy, where is she?" Mom shook her head, her voice choked. Lena's gone, honey. She went to a place we can't go to." Dad reacted completely differently. He took all my drawings that had Lena in them and threw them into the trash can outside. I saw him peel every single label with Lena's name off the toys, crumple them up, and toss them away. "What are you doing?" I screamed, crying. "Don't ever mention that name again," he commanded. I looked at Mom, but she just stayed silent and hugged me. Then, 3 weeks later, I saw Lena. That day I was running errands with Mom. We were shopping at the grocery store, then we stopped by the post office. I stood waiting while Mom talked to the clerk behind the counter. There were lots of posters on the wall. I wandered over to look at them. Then I stopped. On the wall, there was a poster with the bold words, "Missing." Below was a photo. It was Lena. It was definitely her. The brown hair, the big round eyes, the small smile. Especially that brown mark under her chin, too. But below the photo, they wrote a different name. Lisa Lewis, 6 months old, missing from Denver on February 15th. I read it over and over. Maybe they got the name wrong. I didn't really care if it was Lena or Lisa. I just knew this was definitely my little sister. I turned around, pulling hard on Mom's sleeve. "Mom! Mom! Lena's on the wall!" My voice echoed in the post office. Mom jumped. "Emily, be quiet." But I kept talking. "I saw Lena. She's on the wall." I pointed toward the poster. The clerk at the counter looked at the poster, then looked at my mom. Mom grabbed my arm, pulling me out of the post office. "I'm sorry," Mom said to the clerk. "She's a little confused. In the parking lot, I still tried to explain. Mom turned around. Her hand flew up and slapped my cheek. I was stunned because Mom had never hit me before. Mom's eyes were red. Her voice was shaking. "That is not Lena. You're wrong. It's just a baby who looks like her. If you don't stop right now, Dad will punish you very badly when he gets home." I nodded, sobbing, and promised to be good. That evening, I sat in my room. Through the door, I heard Dad come home, the sound of my parents talking from the kitchen. At first, they spoke softly, then their voices got louder. They were arguing intensely about handling something. Mom cried a lot, and Dad kept telling her to be quiet. Then the sound of a car engine rang out. It seemed Dad had left because I only heard the sound of Mom still crying downstairs. We never went back to that post office again. I never saw Lena or Lisa again. My parents never explained what happened, and I learned to be quiet. But I never forgot my little sister, especially her wide, blank eyes. Then one day, at dinner, Mom asked me what I thought about having a little brother. "But what about Lena? When is she coming back?" Dad suddenly stared at me, his hands gripping the knife and fork tightly. Mom didn't answer but smiled and asked, "Does anyone want more mashed potatoes?" I've always been proud of my ability to work tirelessly. 15 years of driving trucks cross-country has forged in me an endurance few people possess. But now, after everything that happened, I realized that pride was just a dangerous thing that could kill me at any moment. I'll never forget that fateful night. It was a long haul from Missouri to Oregon, passing through North Dakota, Montana, and Texas. The company offered to split the trip between two drivers, but I refused. I wanted to prove I could complete the trip on time, and maybe even earlier than expected. The highway was deserted at 1 a.m. The summer night sky was clear, stars twinkling like thousands of eyes looking down. I had been driving continuously for nearly 18 hours, only stopping for gas and bathroom breaks. Strong black coffee wasn't working anymore, and the caffeine pills were starting to lose their effect. My eyes stung, my neck and shoulders ached, but I still tried to focus on the road ahead. Just a few more hours, I told myself, trying to fight off the drowsiness slowly taking over my body. The deserted stretch of road stretched out before me, flanked by dense pine forests, black as ink. The radio had started getting staticky since I left the last small town, and now it was just annoying white noise. I turned it off, leaving a silence broken only by the loud rumble of the truck's engine. Maybe that's when I started losing focus. My eyelids felt heavy, and I had to constantly shake my head, slap my face to keep myself awake. A few times I even turned on the cabin light and rolled down the window to let the cold air hit my face. But no matter how hard I tried, my body was gradually succumbing to the need for rest. I remember dozing off for a moment, maybe just a few seconds, but enough for the truck to drift out of its lane. The sound of tires grinding against the median strip woke me up, and I quickly steered back, heart pounding in my chest. "Wake up, Kevin. Just a short distance left," I encouraged myself. I decided to stop at the next rest stop to wash my face and get more coffee. But according to the map, the nearest rest stop was about a 45-minute drive away. I needed to find a way to stay awake until then. It was right then that I saw something lying in the middle of the road ahead. At first, I thought it was just a piece of cloth blown by the wind, or maybe a plastic bag. But as the truck got closer, under the headlights, I realized it was a dress. A pale purple dress, lying stretched out on the road surface, as if someone had just dropped it. I slowed down, wondering why there was a dress in the middle of a deserted highway at midnight like this. As the truck slowed, I saw something else ahead, a small pair of shoes, children's shoes, lying about 10 yards from the dress. This wasn't normal. And then, as the truck continued forward, I started seeing more things. A small pink jacket, a pair of jeans, a t-shirt, all children's clothes, scattered on the road like pieces of a horrifying puzzle. I stopped the truck, my heart pounding in my chest. What happened here? Had a child been in an accident? Or maybe someone just dropped a bag of clothes from their car? Logic told me to turn on the hazard lights, grab the flashlight from the glove compartment, and carefully open the truck door. The cold night air filled the cabin, making me shiver. I jumped down from the truck, closed the door, and locked it. My footsteps echoed on the pavement as I walked towards the purple dress. I bent down to pick it up, feeling the soft cotton fabric under my calloused fingers. It was the dress of a child around 8 to 10 years old, with small floral patterns printed on the purple fabric. It was clean and untorn, as if it had been worn not long ago. I continued following the trail of clothes, picking up each item one by one and checking the surroundings. No signs of an accident or a struggle, no bloodstains. As I picked up the last jacket, I heard a noise from the edge of the forest, a crackling sound like a branch breaking under weight. I whipped around, shining the flashlight towards the sound, but only saw darkness and towering pine trees. "Is anyone there?" I called out, my voice echoing in the silent forest night. No answer, but I felt like I was being watched. I started backing towards the truck, keeping my eyes fixed on the edge of the woods. That's when I heard a child's scream, echoing from deep within the forest. A blood-curdling scream, full of fear.
Help me.
I turned towards the sound, flashlight trembling in my hand. "Where are you?" I yelled, but only my own echo answered. And then, a second scream rang out, weaker this time, as if the child was being dragged further into the woods.
Please, help.
Without much thought, I started running towards the scream. If a child was in danger, I couldn't just stand by. I ran into the forest, the flashlight illuminating a faint path, damp leaves underfoot, my heart pounding, breath ragged. "Where are you?" I called out, trying to pinpoint where the scream came from. But as I went deeper into the woods, the screaming stopped, replaced by a suspicious silence. And then, I heard giggling, whispering, and the sound of metal scraping. I stopped, turned off the flashlight, and stood silently, listening. In the dim moonlight filtering through the canopy, I could see a clearing ahead, a group of people standing around something. 3 or 4 dark figures, one of them holding a large object. I squinted in the darkness, trying to see more clearly, and then I saw it. A large speaker, the kind used for outdoor events, and next to it, a man holding a recording device. The scream wasn't real. It was played from the speaker. It was a trap. Terrified, I started backing away, trying not to make a sound. But in the dark, I didn't see the branch behind me, and when I stepped on it, a loud crack echoed. A flashlight beam shone directly into my face, blinding me. "It's there! Get it!" a man's voice yelled. Without hesitating another second, I turned and ran for my life, stumbling over roots and broken branches. Behind me were angry shouts and the sound of branches breaking as they gave chase. When I finally saw the asphalt road and the truck ahead, I felt like I'd been born again. I sprinted towards the truck, fumbling for the key in my pocket with trembling fingers. I had just opened the truck door when I heard a shout from behind. "You're not allowed to know. You won't tell anyone." I turned back and saw one man running out of the woods, followed by 2 others. One of them was holding something long and shiny, maybe a gun or a metal bar. I jumped into the truck, slammed the door shut, and locked it immediately. With shaking hands, I tried to insert the key into the ignition, but it took 3 attempts to succeed. The engine roared to life with its familiar growl just as the first man reached the truck. He pounded hard on the window, his face contorted with anger. "Open the door!" he yelled, his voice partly drowned out by the engine noise. I hit the gas, the truck lurched forward, but before I got far, I heard a loud bang and felt something hit the passenger side window. The glass shattered, sending fragments flying into my face. I felt the sting as my skin was cut. Not daring to stop, I kept pressing the accelerator, the heavy truck speeding up on the deserted highway. In the rearview mirror, I could see the figures growing smaller, finally disappearing into the night. I drove like crazy, not daring to slow down for even a second. Cold wind blasted through the broken window. Blood from the small cuts on my face ran down my neck, but I didn't care. I just wanted to get away from there as fast as possible. It took nearly an hour of continuous driving before I felt safe enough to call 911. I stopped at a gas station, my hands still trembling as I dialed. I gave my information, and the dispatcher promised police would arrive within 20 minutes. The police arrived. They took my statement, photographed the broken truck window, and the cuts on my face. "Can you describe them?" an officer asked. I shook my head. It was dark, and everything happened so fast. I just saw 3 or 4 men, but I couldn't see their faces clearly. After completing the report, they gave me a phone number to call if I remembered anything else, and said they would patrol that area. They also advised me to go to the hospital to get my injuries checked, but I refused. I just wanted to continue my journey, deliver the load, and get back home. 4 years have passed. I've never taken that route again, always choosing other routes, even if they take longer. The police haven't found the people who attacked me, and I never found out their real purpose. Was it a robbery or some sick game?